In the middle of our family dinner, the mailman burst in and threw a package onto the table. "This is urgent, and you'd better all sit down." For a moment, nobody moved. The warmth of the dining room seemed to fade, replaced by a cold tension that gripped the air. My mother's fork hovered midair. My father's eyes locked on the box, narrowing with suspicion. The package was wrapped in thick brown paper, the edges creased and worn as if it had traveled far. Tied tightly with coarse twine, it bore no postage, no sender's name. Only our family name was scrawled across the top in black ink bold, uneven strokes that seemed almost carved into the paper rather than written. Dad stood, the legs of his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "Who gave this to you?" The mailman's breath puffed in the warm air, a reminder of the winter night outside. "It was left at the depot with instructions. Deliver immediately, no delay, no questions. Directly to you." He hesitated, glancing around the table. His gaze lingered on me for a fraction longer, then stepped back toward the door. "That's all I know." Without waiting for a reply, he left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. The sound seemed to echo. No one spoke. The smell of roast chicken and herbs now felt heavy, almost oppressive. Dad pulled the package closer, his hands steady but tense. He untied the twine with deliberate care, set it aside, and peeled away the paper. Beneath was a wooden box, darkened with age, the brass latch tarnished and scratched. "Do you recognize it?" my brother Daniel asked, his tone caught between curiosity and unease. "No," Dad replied quickly, but there was something in his voice, a hesitation, that made me doubt him. He flipped open the latch. Inside was a single cream-colored envelope, sealed with deep red wax. Pressed into the wax was a strange symbol, a circle crossed vertically by two parallel lines. Mom leaned in, her brow furrowed. "Open it." Dad broke the seal. A faint scent of old paper drifted into the air. He unfolded the letter and began to read. At first, his expression didn't change. But with each line, his jaw tightened and the color drained from his cheeks. By the end, his hand trembled just enough for me to notice. "What does it say?" Mom asked sharply. He didn't answer. He read it again, slower this time. Then he folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Tell us," Daniel pressed. "What's going on?" Dad's eyes moved from one of us to the other, finally settling on me. His voice was low, urgent. "We have to leave. Tonight." The room erupted in overlapping voices. "Leave? Now? Where? Why?" But Dad didn't respond. As he stepped away from the table, the envelope shifted in his pocket, and for the briefest moment I saw the letter's contents, block letters, all caps. Only one phrase seared itself into my mind before it vanished from sight. "They have found us." Dad's words hung in the air like a command nobody knew how to process. "We have to leave. Tonight." Mom was the first to move. "Leave? For how long? Where are we even going?" Dad didn't answer. He was already heading to the hallway closet, pulling out an old duffel bag. "Pack essentials. Only what you can carry. We have 30 minutes. Daniel laughed nervously. "This is insane. We're not just." "Now, Daniel." Dad's tone had a weight to it that stopped my brother mid-sentence. Mom caught my arm as I stood. "Do you know something? Did your father tell you anything?" I shook my head, but the truth was I didn't need to know details. The look in Dad's eyes told me everything. Whatever was happening, it was serious. I went in my room and threw clothes into a backpack. My mind raced with possibilities. Witness protection? Some family debt? Old enemies? None of it made sense. From downstairs, I heard the slam of a door. Dad's voice followed, sharp, "Stay inside." I ran to the landing. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of a black SUV idling across the street. Its headlights were off, but I could see the faint glow of someone inside, watching. Dad shut the door, locked it twice, then drew the curtains. "We're leaving in 25 minutes. Be ready." The atmosphere in the house had changed. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside felt amplified. Mom moved quickly from room to room, muttering to herself, checking locks, closing blinds. Daniel disappeared into the garage. I grabbed my phone and tried to look up the strange symbol from the wax seal, but before the search results loaded, the screen went black. Dead battery, though I'd charged it fully that morning. The sound of shattering glass made me jump. I ran toward the noise and found Daniel in the kitchen, holding a baseball bat, shards of the back door's window scattered on the floor. "Someone tried the lock," he said, breathing hard. Dad appeared instantly, gun in hand. He didn't point it, but the fact he had it at all made my stomach twist. Nobody goes near the doors. Upstairs now. We regrouped in the living room. The package's wooden box still sat on the table, empty except for the faint imprint where the envelope had rested. I couldn't stop staring at it. Then came the knock. 3 times slow, deliberate. Dad motioned for silence. Another knock followed, this time softer, accompanied by a low voice through the door. "You have until midnight." When Dad yanked the door open, the porch was empty. Dad didn't wait to explain the empty porch. "Get in the car. Now." We piled into the SUV, Dad driving, Mom in the passenger seat, Daniel and I in the back. The street outside looked almost normal, except for the black SUV still parked down the block. Its headlights flared to life as soon as we pulled away. Dad didn't speak, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Mom clutched the duffel bag on her lap like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Who are they?" I asked. "Not now," Dad said. The silence that followed was heavy. Every turn we made, the SUV behind us matched. When we slowed for a stop sign, it slowed. When we sped up, it did too. Dad abruptly turned onto a side road that cut through a stretch of woods. The asphalt here was cracked, littered with leaves. The other SUV followed, its engine a low growl in the distance. "Is this the plan? Just keep driving?" Daniel asked, his voice sharp with frustration. Dad didn't answer. He reached for the glove compartment, pulled out a burner phone, and tossed it to Mom. "Text the number saved in there. Just the word, go." Mom did as told. Seconds later, headlights flared ahead. A large delivery truck pulled out from a side road, positioning itself between us and the SUV behind. When the black vehicle tried to pass, the truck swerved, blocking it. Dad exhaled once, then turned down an even narrower road. We drove for nearly 20 minutes, deeper into the dark. Finally, he pulled over by an abandoned gas station, its sign hanging at an angle, paint peeling. "Out," Dad said. The cold hit instantly. The place smelled of rust and wet leaves. A single dim bulb flickered over the station's office. Dad led us inside. The interior was empty except for a wooden table in the center. On it sat another package, same brown paper, same twine, same symbol stamped on the wax seal. My chest tightened. "How?" "It means we're still on schedule," Dad interrupted, though his voice carried no relief. He opened the package. Inside was an old Polaroid photo of our house, taken tonight. Through the window, all 4 of us were visible at the dinner table. Daniel swore under his breath. Mom stepped back, her hand over her mouth. Under the photo was a small folded map. A red line traced a route to somewhere in the mountains, ending at a black X. Beside it, 3 words were written in neat block letters: "Arrive by dawn." Dad folded the map, slipped it into his coat, and looked at us. "We keep moving." We left the gas station without another word. Dad took the wheel again, the map now folded neatly in his jacket. The night pressed in from all sides, the forest flanking the road like a solid wall. The further we drove, the narrower the road became. Branches scraped against the sides of the SUV, the sound sharp in the cold stillness. "Are we going to talk about this?" Daniel asked suddenly. "Or are we just pretending this is normal?" Dad's eyes didn't leave the road. "Talking won't help right now." The headlights caught movement ahead. A deer darted across, disappearing into the trees. But as the beam swept past, I thought I saw another shape, tall and unmoving, just beyond the tree-line. Watching. I turned to look again, but it was gone. Half an hour passed before Dad slowed the car. Up ahead, a small wooden bridge spanned a narrow river, the water below black and fast. Parked on the far side was an old pickup truck with its hood up. A man in a heavy coat stood beside it, his back to us. "We're not stopping, right?" I asked. Dad hesitated, just long enough for the man to turn his head. His face stayed in shadow, but he raised one hand and waved us forward. As we crossed the bridge, the man stepped toward the SUV, pulling something from his coat. Dad braked. The man held up a photograph and pressed it to the windshield. It was us, in the SUV. Taken tonight. Before any of us could react, he dropped the photo on the hood and walked away, disappearing into the dark without a word. Daniel swore quietly. Dad didn't speak, just drove on. The road climbed higher into the mountains, twisting and turning. The air grew colder. My phone, useless since dinner, buzzed suddenly in my pocket. No number, just a single message. Turn around now. I showed it to Dad. He glanced at it and kept driving. An hour later, we reached a crossroads. According to the map, we had to take the left fork. But parked in the middle of that road was another car, doors open, lights off. The shape of someone sitting in the driver's seat was just visible. Stay here, Dad said, opening his door. Mom grabbed his arm. Don't. But he was already walking toward the car. From inside our SUV, I could see his breath in the air, see him lean toward the open driver's door, then stop. He turned sharply, scanning the dark trees. The next second, a beam of light cut through the branches behind us. Headlights. Another vehicle was coming, fast. Get out of the road. I shouted, but before Dad could move, the approaching car swerved around us and sped past, heading straight for the empty one at the fork. The moment they passed, both vehicles went dark. Dad backed away from the fork without another word, slid into the driver's seat, and turned the SUV onto the right road instead of the one marked on the map. His hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles pale in the dashboard light. No, Mom whispered. That's not the way. It is now, Dad said. If they expect us left, we go right. The road narrowed quickly, winding deeper into the mountains. The trees seemed to press closer with every turn, branches arching overhead to block most of the starlight. Our headlights carved a thin tunnel through the black. I glanced behind us. No cars. No lights. Just darkness swallowing the road. We drove in silence for nearly 15 minutes before the first sign of life appeared, an old wooden sign nailed to a tree. The paint was faded, but I could just make out the words, Dead Yendi. Daniel leaned forward. We should turn around. Dad ignored him. A mile later, the forest opened slightly to reveal a single cabin, its windows glowing faintly. Smoke curled from the chimney. As we passed, a figure stepped onto the porch, tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, face obscured. They didn't wave. They didn't move. They just watched us. Then, as the SUV rolled by, they raised their hand and pointed down the road ahead. Did you see that? I whispered. No one answered. Another 5 minutes brought us to an old steel bridge spanning a gorge. A sign hung crookedly on one post, weight limit 2 tons. Dad stopped before crossing, scanning the rusted structure. That bridge won't hold us, Mom said firmly. Before Dad could reply, the flip phone in his coat, the same one from the gas station, buzzed. He put it to his ear, listening. His jaw tightened. Understood. He pocketed the phone and looked at us. We cross. The metal groaned under our weight as we drove slowly across, the sound echoing into the gorge below. Halfway over, I caught movement in the corner of my eye, lights flickering in the trees behind us. We made it to the other side. Dad pressed on, but the road quickly turned to gravel, then dirt. Finally, the path ended in a small clearing. At its center sat another package, identical to the first two, brown paper, twine, red wax seal. Dad killed the engine. The forest was silent except for the faint hiss of cooling metal. He got out, retrieved the package, and brought it back inside. We all leaned in as he opened it. Inside was a single object, an old brass key, worn smooth, and a note with 3 words written in block capitals, for the final door. Dad turned the brass key over in his hand, his thumb tracing the worn edges. We keep going, he said, sliding it into his jacket. But where? Daniel asked. Dad unfolded the map again. This time, a new red line had been drawn, leading from our current location deeper into the mountains. No X this time, just the words "Final Door" scrawled across the end of the route. The dirt road narrowed until it was barely wide enough for the SUV. Branches clawed at the sides, the screech of metal against wood grating in the stillness. We drove for over an hour without seeing another soul. Then the forest abruptly opened into a wide, moonlit field. In the center stood a weathered signpost with 3 arrows pointing in different directions. One arrow read town, another river. The third was blank, the wood darkened as if the letters had been burned away. Dad didn't hesitate, he turned toward the blank arrow's path. The ground grew rough, the incline steeper. We passed an abandoned school bus half buried in earth, its windows smashed, seats visible through the gaping holes. I thought I saw movement inside, but when I turned my head, it was gone. Half a mile later, we hit a barricade, thick logs chained together, blocking the road. Dad stopped, killed the engine, and stepped out. "Stay in the car," he said. We watched him approach the barricade. He bent, inspecting the chain, then pulled something from his pocket, the brass key. It fit perfectly into the padlock. The chain clattered to the ground. Dad waved us forward. Beyond the barricade, the road wound higher, the air colder. I checked my watch, 3:47 a.m. We rounded a bend and saw lights ahead, not the warm glow of a cabin, but harsh white beams sweeping slowly across the trees, like searchlights. Dad stopped again, this time killing the headlights. We rolled forward in darkness until the source of the lights came into view, 2 tall poles with rotating lamps, illuminating a massive metal door set into the side of the mountain. The door had no handles, no visible hinges, just a keyhole in the center. Dad parked, turned to us, and said, "When this opens, we go straight through. No stopping. No matter what's on the other side." Before we could respond, a figure stepped into the light from the trees, tall, wearing a long coat, face hidden in shadow. They raised their hand slowly and pointed directly at me. The figure's arm remained raised, fingers still aimed at me. Even from across the clearing, I could feel the weight of that gesture, like it meant more than just being singled out. Dad's voice cut through the silence. "Stay in the car." But my hand was already on the door handle. I didn't know why. Maybe it was the stillness of the figure, maybe the way the cold night air pressed against the glass, but I needed to step out. The ground crunched beneath my shoes. The figure didn't move, didn't lower their arm. Only when I was halfway to them did they finally turn toward the massive metal door. Dad was beside me now, the brass key in his hand. "Whatever happens, keep moving." He approached the door. The key slid into the lock with a metallic click that echoed across the clearing. The searchlights above flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging us into shadow. A deep, grinding sound followed, the door splitting down the middle, each half sliding into the rock with a force that made the ground tremble. Cold air rushed out from the darkness beyond, carrying a smell I couldn't place, metallic, damp, and strangely familiar. Inside, the space was dimly lit by a series of narrow overhead strips, each casting a pale rectangle of light on the floor. The walls were smooth metal, curving slightly inward, like we were stepping into the hull of a ship. "Go," Dad urged, guiding us forward. We walked deeper, the door sliding shut behind us with a final thud. The sound echoed for what felt like forever. The hallway led to a wide chamber. In the center stood a single table. On it, a third package identical to the others, twine perfectly tied, wax seal unbroken. Dad approached slowly, scanning the walls. There were no doors, no windows, no visible way out. Only the package. He opened it. Inside was a small, black device, no bigger than a deck of cards. A faint red light blinked on its side. Next to it lay a folded piece of paper. Dad read it in silence, his jaw tightening. Then he looked at me. "They want you to take it." "What is it?" I asked. His answer was almost a whisper. "It's the reason we've been running." Before I could react, the red light on the device began blinking faster. Somewhere in the walls, machinery roared to life, and the floor beneath us began to move, carrying the table, and me along with it, toward another opening that hadn't been there seconds ago. Dad shouted my name, but the gap closed between us, a solid wall sealing me off from the others. I was alone. The moving floor carried me into a smaller chamber, this one colder, lit only by a single overhead light. The walls here were different, not smooth metal, but lined with photographs. I froze. They were all of me. Some from years ago, some from weeks ago, some from tonight. Every age, every place, school, birthdays, random walks down the street. In some, I wasn't alone. My family was there. And in the corners of many photos, barely visible, stood figures in long coats, faces hidden. A door on the far wall slid open with a hiss. A man stepped inside. Not masked, not hooded, just an ordinary-looking man in a dark suit. His expression was calm, almost sympathetic. "Finally," he said, as if we'd been waiting for this meeting our whole lives. "What is this? Where's my family?" "They're safe. For now." His gaze flicked to the black device still in my hand. "That's yours. I don't even know what it is." "You will. It's what you were meant to carry. Everything up until tonight was to bring you here with that in your hand." He walked to the wall and tapped one of the photos, me at age 5, holding a toy truck. "From the beginning, we've shaped where you go, who you meet, what choices you think you make. All to prepare you to take the next step." I took a step back. "Why me?" His eyes locked on mine. "Because your father took the step before you. And his father before him. It's a line that doesn't break." I shook my head. "I'm not doing anything for you." He smiled faintly. "You already have. The moment you picked it up, it became active." The device in my hand emitted a soft chime. A thin slot opened on its side, revealing something metallic inside, a key. Not the brass one from before, but silver, engraved with the same circle and two lines symbol from the first package. "That," the man said, "will open the place only you can enter. And when you do, you'll understand why you could never turn back." I looked at the key, then at the endless rows of photos. For the first time, I noticed the newest one, me, standing here, holding the key. The ink was still wet. A loud clank echoed through the chamber as another door slid open behind the man. Bright light poured in, blinding me. "Time to go," he said. I stepped forward, the key warm in my palm. I didn't know what was on the other side of that light, only that whatever it was, my family's lives, and maybe mine, had been leading here since before I was born. And as the door closed behind me, I finally understood. The package at dinner hadn't been a warning. It had been an invitation.